The first two improvements that I made really help to improve the efficiency and the usability of the bead roller. Let's take a quick look and I'll show you what I did. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I thought we'd take a quick look at one of these vise-mounted bead rollers. Now, I picked this one up from Jegs, but it's the same one that like Woodward Fab makes, Eastwood, Harbor Freight used to offer them. There's a bunch of them out there. I just happened to go with the one from Jegs because at the time they had the best price. Now, these bead rollers, they're a cheap, economical way to get into bead rolling. And that makes for a simple investment in something that can really improve your sheet metal work. It allows you to up your game a bit, to make more customized and intricate pieces. So, that being said, we all know that there are some improvements that can be made to these bead rollers. So, let's take a look at a couple that I've done, and there's still a couple that I want to do. The first two improvements that I made really help to improve the efficiency and the usability of the bead roller. Let's take a quick look and I'll show you what I did. All right, so here's the first modification that I made. Now, when you get one of these bead rollers, there's a bolt that just goes right here and it pushes down on this block, and that's used to tighten the die onto the piece that you're wanting to bead roll. So you get your wrench or your socket, and first you got to remember what size socket you need, and that's why I wrote mine down right there. And then you go get the wrench, you tighten this bolt down, work your piece, you do your bead rolling, and then you put your piece down. And if you're anything like me, I tend to put the piece down on top of my wrench. So then when I go to try to loosen this, I got to find my wrench, and it's always underneath the piece that I was just bead rolling. That's just me. So my thought was to, well, get a longer bolt, and then I was going to weld on just a rod on top or something to basically make a thumb screw. So as I was searching my garage, I came across just this old cheapo C-clamp. And I looked at it and I was like, that looks like it's the same thread pattern. So I backed this out of the C-clamp, and sure enough, it thread right in. Now I have a simple thumb screw to tighten and loosen my die. That's the first mod I made. And there you can see how well that works. Now, also, this leads right into my second mod. And there's my second mod. So, normally, after you run this down, and you run your piece, through the bead roller, when you get done, you would have to loosen this up, and you would have to lift the die in order to get your piece out. What I did was I got this, it's a 1/4 bolt. I just drilled a hole through this piece here and into the block, and then I tapped the block. And then I just drove this 1/4 bolt in there, added a spring, and now when I loosen this, that spring lifts the die, and I'm able to get my piece in and out without having to take the time. And granted, it's only a second or two to go over, pull this up and remove your piece. But like any tool, tools are there to make our lives easier. So if we can improve our tools, make our lives easier even more, why not do it? So this was just a bolt that I had in my spare parts, and this spring actually was from my transmission. This is one of the old springs out of the valve body in my 3-speed transmission that I rebuilt and did a shift kit on that I ended up replacing. So this was actually just sitting in one of those magnetic bowls for, God, it's got to be a couple of years now. And it just ended up being a nice, tight spring. It's got a lot of tension to it. I did add a couple of washers just because I wanted a little more tension out of that spring. But now, as you can see, that thing works great. 2 simple mods to just improve your efficiency and your usability when it comes to these bead rollers. Oh, another quick tip not really a mod, just a tip. As you can see, I had the Allen size written down. No, and that's for the set screws for the dies. I just stuck a magnet on the back here, went out and got a dedicated T-handle Allen wrench, and now that stays with the tool, and I don't have to go searching for my Allen wrench. The next mod that I want to do is add some bracing to the back side. These bead rollers do have a tendency to kind of deflect or flex a bit when you're rolling thicker material. I was rolling 22 gauge and I didn't really have that issue, but if you look at like the Harbor Freight version or the Woodward Fab or the Eastwood versions, they're all made out of 1/2 inch plate. This one, if you look at it close enough, if you throw a measuring tape on there, this one is actually 9/16. Now, Woodward does make their super bead roller, and that one's 5/8. So this one seems to fall in the middle of, let's say, the Eastwood, which is a 1/2 inch, or the Woodward Fab super bead roller. So the flex on this one isn't too bad. It flexes a little bit. So I am going to add some bracing. I think what I also want to do is incorporate a way to mount this to a stand in that bracing. All right, so here's the basic idea of the frame that I came up with. The upright piece here is a piece of 2-inch hitch steel, and that extends 6.5 inches below the frame of the bead roller. And that way, that'll give me 6 inches of post to go inside of a stand that I'm going to eventually make out of hitch steel. So that's the upright piece. And then for the cross pieces, I don't think I need them to go all the way to the end or all the way to these mounting points. Considering that the flex happens back here, I think as long as these extend beyond the halfway point of the frame of the bead roller, then I should be okay. So I cut these to 11 inches. The bead roller itself is about 22 long, so I cut these to 11, plus with the mounting here, they'll extend beyond the halfway point. And these are 2x2 by 3/16 angle iron. And I've got them configured the way that I do so that the upright piece here, or the cross piece, is close to the center of each beam. And that should give me the best prevention against flex here. I was gonna have it up at the top so that I could maybe mount some posts to put the dies on, but I thought that wouldn't give me as much prevention against the flex as having this near the middle, basically like an I-beam. So, and I got them, so that's why I have it situated the way that I do. And then obviously I don't want to block any of the opening here, so I'm just going to make these so that they sit just flush or just below flush of the opening, and that way none of this will interfere with the about 18 inches of throat depth on the bead roller. Now that I've got this thing pretty well spot welded together, I mean, there's still a few areas I want to clean up, maybe do some extra welding on, but for this point, it's welded together well enough to do a test. So I'll try to put like a before clip up here in the corner somewhere, and let's see just how much this improved the flex. Now this thing is not moving at all. I'd say that's a success. So I'm going to do some more welding and then give it a coat of paint. The last mod that I want to do isn't really to the bead roller itself, but it's to the dies. So let me see if I can get this to show up here. So there you can see there's a marring on the surface, and it is on both sides, so it's created by both die. There's one right there. So what that is, it's from this edge of the die. Let's see if I can get to focus on that. So the edge does have a chamfer to it, just a very slight chamfer, but even the edges of that are still kind of sharp, and that is marring the surface around the bead detail. So I think by sanding that down, making it more rounded, and getting rid of that sharp edge, I think it'll get rid of those tooling marks on the surface. But that's going to be for another day, because it is bloody hot out here in the garage. I'm dying, so I'm going back inside to edit. So thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll catch you on the next one.